This is part 2 of Can't We All Just Get Along? Conflict in the Congregation. What we are going to discuss during this particular part of the conference is some terms that Murray Bowen in Family Systems used to describe the issues that are going on. Some 5 key concepts that he used particularly as catchphrases to describe how we are dealing with each other and with conflict. The first key term to remember, the first concept, is the concept of the identified patient. There is a person within every family, Bowen says, who has obvious symptoms of dysfunction. And we tend to put all the dysfunction on that person, often by keeping the focus on one member of the family. The family can then deny all the other issues that are going on within a relationship, making that person symptomatic of everything. For instance, in a congregation, I have sat with boards and leaders in a congregation who have said, if we just get rid of the pastor, then we won't have any problem. Because the identified patient in that particular relationship is the pastor. In the minds of the board, the pastor is the reason for all the problems that are going on. This is never the case. However, in a family and in a church system, we tend to make it very specific that one person is the cause of all the conflict. One person is the cause of the challenges. In a husband and wife relationship, frequently the wife may say to the husband, if you would just do this, everything would be fine, not recognizing at all that the wife has some responsibility for her way of behaving, for her response or reaction to everything. We must address the whole and not just the individual, Murray Bowen says. I have to have a caveat here. In situations of physical abuse, many times I have in counseling encountered a husband and wife, for instance, where the husband would say to me, the husband who has been physically abusing the wife would say to me, if she would just do what I'd say, then I wouldn't have to hit her. I've literally heard somebody say that. In doing that, the husband is blaming the wife. However, we cannot say that because the wife is allowing the husband to hit her, that she is part of the cause. But perhaps the husband is reacting to her because of something that has gone on in his life before. The identified patient is our way of trying to simplify or make simplistic the problem. And it is a denial of the whole relationship and the interactions that are going on between all the parties. The identified patient is the first concept that Bowen puts forth. The second one that he puts forth is the concept of homeostasis. Homeostasis is balance, a tendency of any organization to preserve its organizing principles. We've done it, we've never done it that way before. We've always done it this way before, is an example of homeostasis. People don't like change because change is risky. Change is something that has an element of unknown to it. If we change doing this, perhaps things won't go as well, or perhaps things will collapse altogether. The thing that keeps people in relationship is often the very thing that makes them resistant to change. People feel safe with what they know, and so they tend not to want to break out of that and change. This is homeostasis. You often see this in a church that is afraid to change because the culture is changing. This actually spells death for the congregation, as a swamp is an example of a system that has taken on homeostasis. It does not get fresh water in. There is no water that goes out, and so it tends to stay the same, and over a period of time, it becomes contaminated. A swamp is a system of homeostasis. In the same way, Bowen says our tendency to keep our organizing principles the same is what causes a problem and a conflict, because we tend to want to keep the balance. No matter how poorly it works, don't mess with it, because at least it's working. Old board functions an old way. A new member comes in on the board and says, why don't we consider this? Or in fact, questions our assumptions of what is right and what is wrong. The old board fights with the new member because this person is trying to accomplish change or to have the board look at things a different way. And the old board says, don't mess with what we've already done. This is homeostasis. The third concept that Bowen puts forth is called differentiation of self. This is the capacity of the family member to define his or her own life goals and values apart from the surrounding pressures. Awareness of your own role in the system, and yet still staying aware of your relationship with yourself as well as other people. Differentiation of self can be stated by a person who says, I understand that you may not agree with me. However, here is where I stand on this issue. That person has a differentiation of self, an ability to recognize and not pull away from relationship and yet still express their position on a subject. I stand here, nevertheless I stand in relationship with you. That is a person who has good, healthy self-differentiation. Poor self-differentiation is illustrated by the inability to make an intentional choice. Everybody wants to go eat breakfast, and I am unwilling to say that I don't want breakfast, I'm ready for lunch. Inability to express your own choice. Another way that poor differentiation of self is illustrated is the inability to change. Status quo. Stay safe is what you want. You don't want to change. Let's just leave things the way they are. Poor self-differentiation is also illustrated by trying to please everyone, which is, as any of you know who have tried that, something that is doomed to failure because you will not please everyone. Poor differentiation of self is illustrated also by porous relationships, few boundaries, inability to say, no, I will not do that, or I will only allow this to happen. Poor differentiation of self may also be illustrated congregationally by lowering the level of family functioning. The more likely a person is to adore you or to be absolutely a follower and a fan of yours, the more likely that person is to also be offended by you. They have extremes. It is often said for pastors, the person that meets you at the airplane is the person most likely to cause the problems. They want to be your best friend, but at the same time, they want you to do what they want you to do. And poor differentiation of self would be the pastor allowing that person to then control them and control what they do and how they pastor. There is an argument about drums, guitar, organ, piano, and these worship wars we have seen in many, many congregations. For a worship leader to be able to worship functionally and effectively, that worship leader needs to effectively evaluate what's going on in the community, what is going on in the congregation, what the congregational goals and vision is, what the congregational population is at the moment, and what they are looking, who they are looking to appeal to. The worship leader takes all of that in and then should make a decision about how to lead worship based on that. However, if a worship leader has poor differentiation of self, the worship leader instead will be influenced by the person that comes in and sits on their couch and says, this is the way we would like to have it. We always have had hymns in this congregation, or we hate hymns, we want choruses in this congregation. The worship leader then is thrown about, as I believe James says in his epistle, thrown about by every wave. Whatever the wave is of the moment, the worship leader will go with. However, to have good differentiation of self, the worship leader needs to take in and evaluate all the different systems, as well as the vision of the congregation, the vision of the senior pastor, and that they have worked together, and then make a decision regarding worship. The fourth concept that Murray Bowen has put forward is called an extended family field. These are influences that have brought you to this point in life, and we talked a little bit about this in the first conference. You are the sum of all your experiences and relationships throughout your life, as well as your personality from God, as well as your reactions and responses to all of those other experiences and relationship. Each relationship that you have had speaks into your response to any situation. And so the extended family field is my mother and my father and my brothers and my sisters, the congregations that have been a part of my life down throughout my life, my present husband and children that I have, my current family, if you will. All of these influences, the intergenerational dynamics that have helped make me what I am, are critical to my functioning, and they cannot be ignored. Years ago in our congregation, we had a woman who had experienced great abuse in her family. But she wanted to say, that was in the past, I have nothing to do with it, I don't ever want to have to deal with that again, I don't ever want to talk about it. She had never gone to counseling over it. She figured that she would just ignore it and deny it had ever taken place, and therefore it would not be a part of who she was. What she didn't understand was her very denial of having had that in her past has actually contributed to who she is today. And so the extended family field is very important. In a church, you have not only the families of every individual member in the church, but you have the generational families that have been in the church down through the years. Who started this church? How did it start? What families were instrumental in this church's growth or this church's influence in the community? Clergy have an unusual opportunity to observe multi-generational processes that are going on because of the presence of the rites of passage in a congregation. For instance, a clergy may bury somebody, may marry somebody, may do the weddings for people and the child dedications. And in that, they get to see the multi-generational family processes that are going on in each family. I have often found I find more out about a family during the time of a funeral, when I sit and listen to the family stories, than I may ever have known in 5 or 10 years of even visiting the family in their home and worshiping with the family, going out to eat with the family. That very experience of dealing with a funeral and the family processes and dynamics that are going on during the planning of that funeral will help me understand more about that family and where they come from. This is the extended family field that has contributed to who each one of us are. And the fifth concept is emotional triangles. When any two parties, Bowen says, when any two parties are uncomfortable with their relationship or their issue, they will bring in or focus on a third party as a way of stabilizing their relationship. Pastors are often called upon to take sides. We do no one favors when we step in because we become a part of the emotional triangle. We treat as immature those two entities who are dealing together. We do not allow them to work out their own issues. An example of clergy triangles may be a minister getting in between a parishioner and another parishioner. A clergy family, a congregational family, and the individual family within the congregation. So you may have the Browns and the Whites, and you may have the whole family congregation. And so those three get in between each other's relationship. Now, a triangle is a part of a relationship. It is a part of reality of our relationships. However, there can be dysfunctional triangles and functional triangles. I have known a minister who would be called at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning to come and settle a dispute between a husband and a wife. And every time the husband and wife would get into a quarrel, they would call that pastor no matter what time of day or night. That did not help the couple, and it did not help the pastor. One of the things that I have found when you become dysfunctionally involved in a triangle, the two persons, the other two parties will turn on you as the third party. They may call you in to help solve their problem, but then what they do is they blame you for the problem. That sometimes is the case. There are exceptions when a third party is involved and is objective. That is a way of perhaps being a healthy triangle. For instance, a pastor may be, a couple may make an appointment with a pastor and say, we would like to come in and talk to you about our marriage. And the pastor will come in and will listen to both sides. We'll ask questions. We'll try to pray with the couple, and we'll try to help the couple to look at different sides. But the pastor makes a mistake when the pastor tries to take sides in a triangle. This is the basic introduction to Murray Bowen's family systems. And in using these different concepts, he helps us to understand more clearly how individuals can function in a dysfunctional or a healthy manner. And these are complications that bring issues to the table. Now, what are the issues of conflict? One of the things that it is important for us to do within a relationship, in a congregation, is to ask, what are the issues that are causing the conflict? What are the dynamics that are going on? They could be issues of power. Perhaps there is a power squabble or a disagreement over who controls, who has power in a certain issue. There is a lack of communication. That may be an issue that is causing conflict. There may be woundedness that is going on that has yet to come to the surface. The issue of conflict may be simply change. One person wants change and one person does not want change. There may be a lack of information. Frequently, I have seen pastors or pastoral staffs get into problems with the congregation because they simply don't give the congregation enough information to let them know why they are making the decision they are making. Money is often a conflictual issue within a congregation. How to spend money, where to send money, how to use the money that they have for ministry needs. Values, of course, can be an issue of conflict because, as I've said, because we come from so many different and conflicting systems, we will have different values. Though I was raised in a pastor's home in the Church of God in Kentucky and Ohio, I will have a different value system than my husband, who was raised in a Church of God in a layperson's family in Michigan. I just will. I have different education. My community was different. The culture was different. The geography was even different. The size of the church was different. So our values are different, no matter where we come from. And even those children who were all raised in the same family have different values because they have had different experiences. Another issue that causes conflict is scriptural misunderstanding or scriptural disagreement. One person in a congregation may take the Bible literally. Another person may take the Bible not quite so literally. And so you see there will be a difference of opinion and a conflict that will be raised. Often, conflicts are raised because of doctrinal differences. Conflicts are also raised because of a lack of boundaries or because of the difference in boundaries that have been set by different persons or families in the congregation. There is often a conflict over a fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of status, fear of respect or loss of respect, fear of losing something precious to you. This often causes conflict. These are just a few of the issues of conflict. And as you sit together, perhaps you can come up with some other issues of conflict that have raised some dysfunction within your congregation. This is the end of part 2 of the conferences. Can't we just all get along?